Hey there, this is Eiji Morishita, the Authority Genius, and today I want to share with you a critical concept that if you don't get this concept, you're going to be fighting upstream and it's going to seem like a struggle. Now, many of you have heard of the 80-20 rule, where 20% of your results 20% of your actions produce 80% of your results. Also in business, 20% of your clients will produce 80% of your income. And the top 20% in any industry produce 80% of the market share and produce 80% of the money. But the truth is, let's dissect the truth here. Now, while that is true, there's another key critical concept, which is the top 1%. Now, the top 1% produce 50% of the money, 50% of the market share. So I want to really critically urge you to focus on being a top 1%er, to be an authority in your field instead of just another expert. Because the truth is, the expert space is getting very, very crowded. And unless you define your uniqueness and really stand out as the authority, it's going to be a lot of competition. The truth is, it's not lonely at the top. It's very crowded at the bottom. And when you become an authority, your competition literally disappears. Your competition will now become collaboration partners who want to partner up with you. Now let's think of who are the authorities, who are the top 1%ers. Think of Google, Apple, Microsoft. For cola brands, it's Coke and Pepsi. Can you name the number 3 cola brand? Who knows? Whenever I speak in front of groups, I ask, who's number 3? No one has any idea. I get like 4 or 5 different answers. But when you're the authority, you're the number 1 trusted brand. For example, like for tissue paper, it's Kleenex. For bandages, it's Band-Aid. It's gone so synonymous that they put it into the dictionary that's now saying, can you hand me a Band-Aid or a Kleenex, that the brand has overtaken the typical name for the product itself. So let's focus on the top 1%. When you're in the top 1%, that means you get 50% of the money, 50% of the market share. In any industry, in the speaking industry, this holds true. The top 1% of speakers produce 50%, earn 50% of the money. These are your Tony Robbins, your Brian Tracy, your Colin Powell, your Bill Clinton, these high-end profile speakers, and they make and earn and control 50% of the market work. And it's also graded on a level of performance. So the top 1% isn't something I made up, but it's like getting the top 20% of the 20%, which produce the top 4%, and getting the top 20% of the 4% produces the top 1%. It's actually 0.8%, but the top 1%, just to make it easy to round up, and actually the top 1% control over 50% of the market share. So it's critical for you to know that. Now, let me share with you, there's different levels of performance here. Now, starting from the bottom 80%, when you're in the bottom 80%, how it works money-wise, and let me just share with you, let's just make the numbers easy. Imagine the market being 100 people and a total amount of $100, just to make it easy, right? So the average person, if you just divide it up, if it was a socialist state or if it was total based on equality, everyone would get $1 each. That would be just based on, regardless of performance, if we just divided up all the income evenly, everyone would get $1 each. Now, so the bottom 80%, guess what? They make $20 as a whole. Now, when if there's 100 people, guess what? There's 80 people in the bottom 80%, which comes out to 25 cents each. That's 1/4. It's 1/4 of what average is. Now, if you're good, and let me just go from the top down to make the numbers easier, is when you're outstanding, when you're number 1 out of 100 people, there's only one 1%er. That person earns $50. $50 being a top 1%er out of $100. For every $100 being made, $50 goes to the top 1%. Now, when you're excellent, the top 4%, so let me just share with you here that the top 20% control 80%, the top 4% controls 64%, And then top 1% control 50%. And so 64% of $100 is $64. So if you're a top 4%er, which is the number 2, number 3, and number 4 person, but you're not number 1, guess what? So out of those $64, $50 would go to number 1, and then number 2, 3, and 4, they would split up $14. They would split up $14 and divide by 3. The average person would get $4.67. That's pretty good, right? You know, it's 4.5 times more than what's average. Pretty good. You know, and if you're average, this is the number 5 through. I'm sorry, I apologize. If you're good and you're in the top 20%, this is the number 5 through number 20, and there's 16 people here now. If you're in the top 20% but not in the top 4%, guess what? Then out of the 80% that you're getting, you're subtracting 64. So so out of the $80, $64 would go to the top 4%. So that leaves $16 for the top 20%, and you divide that up by 16 people, and guess what? You get $1. You do a good job, and you get $1. And so here's the truth, and this is really critical for you to know. This is the truth. When you do an average job or you do a poor job, guess what your rewards are? You get poor rewards. You get poor rewards if you do an average job, and you get 0 or no rewards if you do a poor job. If you do a poor job, guess what? You get fired. You absolutely get fired, and so if you do a poor job, you get fired, and there's no rewards for that. Now, if you do a good job at what you do, then what happens is you don't get good rewards. Guess what? You get average rewards, because you do a good job and you get only $1. You know, you get your fair share if you did an average, if they split it up evenly. So if you do a good job, you don't get good rewards in this society. You just get average rewards. How many of you have found that to be true, where when you do a good job, you only get average rewards? Now, when you do an excellent job, and these are your achievers, these are the top producers, these are your top experts. When you do that, when you do an excellent job, guess what? You don't get excellent rewards, you get good rewards. So these are people who are paid 6 figures, $100,000, $150,000, $250,000 a year, but they're working to the bone. They're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and they're not getting the excellent rewards that you're looking for. So that's what you're looking at here, is the excellent. Now, when you're doing an outstanding job, this is when it's equal. When you do an outstanding job where you stand out from the crowd, that's when you get outstanding rewards. That's when you get 50% of the market share, and you can go ahead and do that. So let me give you some criteria. Let me give you some criteria on how to go ahead and move about this. So when you're good, this is what's called expert status. When you're good at what you do, this is when you get into the expert status here. Now, when you do an excellent job, this is when you become called a top expert. And so when you do an excellent job, you get good rewards. When you stand out, when you stand out from the crowd, when you stand out from the crowd, this is what's called an authority. This is what it means to be an authority, to stand out from the crowd and really position yourself as a top 1%er. When you do that, you stand out. So this is why just being an expert these days isn't enough. Because if you go out and you just position yourself as good, guess what? You get average rewards. You're competing against other people. When you're just an expert, people are competing against you because there isn't much that differentiates you, that defines your uniqueness, your genius, and that's what you need to find out. But when you position yourself as an authority, and there are specific authority genius positioning strategies on how you can build and move forward, that you can work on. So that's what you want. That's what you want, and really stand out as the authority in your field and really focus on being in the top 1%. Because, most people are saying, here, just be good. If you just be an expert, you're going to get clients. But guess what? If people are struggling. There are a lot of people who are good and even great at what they do, but they struggle because they haven't grasped this one concept of being in the top 1% and really focusing on being in this for you. So I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Go ahead, and if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and comment down below, and please share this with other people. Share this with people on Facebook, Twitter. I really believe this message needs to get out there. Until next time, make your life magical.